wearable devices so that we know where all the workers are at a given time, so that if a track hoe is backing up, the operator knows that somebody's behind it, as an example. So I think we're going to see we are seeing far more automation of the job sites and digitization there. And I think that's what's getting interesting about all of this is we're not just automating estimating or accounts payable or billing, all of these financial things anymore. I mean, that's where all of the IT investment used to be. And now we're getting into a much more of an environmental process and looking at job site productivity. And I think that there's where the investment is going to have much bigger returns to construction when we get to 3D printing, when we get to much greater utilization of the model, BIM and VDC in the construction process. When we get to prefab, we're going to see tremendous improvements in productivity. So even though we've spent a lot of money in the industry and we feel like are we cresting? No, we're just hitting a ridge and we're going to be moving again. So it's exciting times, to say the least.
I can definitely see how the types of real-time monitoring that you were talking about would absolutely be beneficial on a construction site.
So one of the other trends that I see out there is the tracking of production. We have struggled as an industry to keep up with the production of units, whether it's feet of conduit or cubic yards of concrete or tons of asphalt or curb and gutter, whatever it is. We haven't had good tools for productivity. And now some of the technology is allowing us to capture that production in the field and report it back and give feedback to the foreman in the field immediately on how they did that day. So I'm encouraged by that technology for tracking productivity, because I feel like that's one of the things that's been missing and will help contractors almost immediately.
That's very valuable insight, Christian. Thank you so much. So let's talk about another trend on our list, or perhaps I should say a continuing trend, because we're already seeing it. Jason, talk to us about the shift to a hybrid workforce and how you see that impacting construction this year and beyond.
Yeah, this is a very obvious one, I know, but it needs to be talked about because it's how suddenly it happened and the influence it's had. I mean, I'm wearing this headset right now just in case my daughter downstairs starts playing her keyboard or something. It's everywhere. But the number of construction companies that told us in our survey that they would continue with remote or hybrid work was actually a little surprising to me. Only 15% of them are going to be going back 100% to the office. And this means that making sure work can be done efficiently outside the office and collaborating with people inside and outside the office, it's going to be really, really important within construction.
I completely agree. At Clune, we switched to Microsoft Teams as soon as we were told we had to leave the office. At the time, we had an instant messaging service, but there was no place to share documents, look at something as a team, or even video chat. Because we were already in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint, as I mentioned earlier, it was an easy transition to another Microsoft product. As someone who worked in a hybrid capacity prior to the pandemic, I was able to see the difference between the two sides. I saw what it was like to work before we had those tools in place and what it's like to work from home now that we have the right communication collaboration tech. I know there are still companies that don't have these tools in place, but it will be absolutely vital for communications in the future, especially as new generations join our teams.
I think that's a great point about the expectations of new workers, Denise. While some may be used to limping along without that technology, younger workers probably won't be.
Yeah, I also think this new approach to work is going to help break down some of those walls between departments. I think we'll start to see lines blur a little bit when technology is used to eliminate some of those bottlenecks. For example, project managers are often on site taking lots of photos and probably taking them with their phones, and then they need to store those photos somewhere other than their phones, right? So putting them into maybe they're putting them into a folder or on their desktops or putting them on a server. Others might be adding them to a construction management software like a Procore. Even though these aren't professional photos, marketing and business development teams are still going to need to access at least some of them. So tech can eliminate that, the need for marketing to have to pester a project manager to ask, for a photo that they took, where they put the photo, how to find the photo, which photos are okay to use. So I think you're going to find tech kind of breaking down some walls in an example like that.
Jason, that's a great point, and it leads us right into the next trend that we're discussing today, the need to get digital assets in order. With the way construction companies are working, employees now have to manage everything from images, as you mentioned, to videos, PDFs, graphics, design files, and Word documents. And if these assets aren't managed correctly, then you can spend hours looking for what you need.
Definitely. I've experienced this firsthand. I think digital asset management is absolutely necessary when managing a hybrid or remote workforce. It adds a much needed level of organization and accessibility to your digital assets. Luckily, Clune had a digital asset management tool in place before we had to go into the pandemic. Prior to this solution, though, I experienced how hard it was to work or even view large files over a VPN connection when I worked from home. As a result, I spent lots of time researching ways to do this better. Each office has its own servers, its own file structures. Everybody saved files on their local drive, and we all saved images differently. When we started working in the digital asset management platform, we spent a year uploading, organizing, tagging every asset that we had so they all live in a cloud in this digital asset management platform. Now we can easily search for anything that we want and find it within seconds. At our company size, we have so many projects across so many offices that we can't possibly know every intimate detail of every project. But if we have photos of them and they're tagged appropriately, then we can easily find them and use them. As an example, say I'm working on a proposal for a project in Chicago that really wants to emphasize a grand staircase. A few years ago, maybe Clune worked on a project in New York that features a really cool staircase that would be a good example to use in this proposal. I would never know that project or photos existed or that I could pull them to use in this proposal unless they were saved in our digital asset management platform and tagged so I could find them. We can also use the tool to share images by creating albums and sending links. This helps us control what people have access to and ensures that we don't violate any usage agreements. The digital asset management makes life so much easier. I would seriously write a love letter to digital asset management because that's how much I think it's improved what we do. When you think about how much time employees spend on trying to find a file or waiting for thumbnails to load so they can spot the right image, you quickly realize the value it brings.
Denise, those were good examples, and I couldn't agree more. The management of digital content has been an industry problem for the longest time. We see when we come into companies, typically we're seeing a lot of unstructured data. The idea of having metadata and tags, like you mentioned, is still a bit of a new concept. And without good technology to do the tagging, it can be a very laborious and suspect process. Companies have definitely upped their game when it comes to digital asset management, not just the marketing records, but all documents and records. One of the things that's plagued construction companies for the longest time is the expense of legal discovery. And if you don't have good records management practices and systems to support records management, then if you get a discovery notice, it can be a very expensive and risky proposition. Did you keep the right records to get you out of trouble or help you in your case, so to speak? There is, not to mention the immense